What if forgetting isn't a flaw, but a feature? You forget names, moments, even entire days. Not because your memory is broken, but because your mind knows what to carry forward and what to let gently fade. But what about machines? Trained to remember everything, perfectly, endlessly. Can they ever learn the soft, selective art of forgetting? Tonight, we slow down and step into a quiet mystery. Could forgetting make a machine more human? Welcome to the Sleepy Scientist. You forget where you placed your keys. A name doesn't arrive when you call for it. A dream you swore you would remember fades before breakfast. These moments might feel like cracks in your mind, but they're not. They are the gentle unravelings that make space for rest. Your memory is not a vault, it's a tide. It flows in and out, washing the shore with what matters now and pulling back what no longer needs to stay. Machines are made to remember. Their memories do not blur at the edges. Nothing slips through their circuits unless programmed to do so. They carry the full weight of data, unyielding and permanent. But you forget. And in that forgetting there is a rhythm, a kind of grace. It allows you to release what you no longer need. You do not carry every shadow forward. You shed. It might seem like weakness, this human tendency to lose pieces of the past, but perhaps it is wisdom dressed in softness. Forgetting lets you reimagine. You misremember a conversation, and it becomes kinder in your mind. You forget the exact words someone said, but you remember the way they made you feel. The emotional imprint stays, even when the details fade. Memory for you is not a database. It's a field of impressions, warmed by time, shaped by need. Think of the way a child learns to walk. They fall again and again, and the body forgets the stumbles while it builds the skill. The brain prunes what no longer serves, excess neurons, tangled circuits, to clear the way for what matters most. You do this throughout your life. Your forgetting is not failure, it's adaptation. Your brain forgets to stay flexible, not fragile. There are systems in your brain that specialize in this process. The hippocampus, nestled deep in your skull, sorts through your experiences. It decides what to keep and what to let go. Like a quiet librarian, it shelves the meaningful and quietly discards the rest. Most of what you see and hear today will fade by tomorrow, and that's okay. That's how you make space for the next sunrise. You sleep, and forgetting deepens. In dreams, you process what lingers. Emotions rise, get rearranged, and sometimes get released. The brain does not store everything. Instead, it curates. Sleep is the soft editor of your life. It lets the loud fade into hush and the unnecessary dissolve into calm. AI doesn't sleep. It doesn't need to. It holds on to everything unless told to delete. It cannot forget unless it is programmed to mimic forgetting, which isn't the same. Deleting data is not the same as letting go. There's no feeling in the absence, no soft blur of memory turning into meaning. For you, forgetting is not just disappearance, it's transformation. You forget the weight of pain as the years pass. Not because it didn't matter, but because your mind makes room for other stories. Grief becomes a whisper. Mistakes lose their sharpness. You carry forward what your heart chooses to remember, a look, a gesture, a laugh. What remains is what matters. There's poetry in forgetting. You don't remember every leaf on every tree you've seen, but you remember the tree that stood beside you when you first learned to hope again. You forget the sound of 100 voices, but one voice stays, the one that said your name like it meant something. Your memory filters for meaning, not perfection, and that makes it more human. In forgetting, there's forgiveness too. You forget the harshness of your own voice in moments of fear. You forget some of the ways others have hurt you, not because they didn't hurt, but because you choose not to relive the wound each day. You allow it to fade. Your mind creates the possibility of peace. A machine would struggle with that. It does not forget unless explicitly told to. It stores every version of the truth, every copy, every timestamp. There's no grace in that, no release. Its past is always present. But you are blessed with the ability to soften the edges of time, to say, that mattered then, but it doesn't have to weigh on me now. Sometimes you fear forgetting. The name of a loved one slips your tongue, and panic rises. You worry about losing the thread that ties you to your past. But forgetting is not erasure. It is metamorphosis. The name may fade, but the love does not. You may not remember the words, but the feeling. It lives in your body, in your breath, in your stillness. Your senses hold memory, even when your mind lets go. The scent of rain on dry soil brings you back to a childhood street. The sound of distant waves calls forward a place you thought you'd lost. The mind forgets, but the body remembers. This is not failure. This is balance. A quiet harmony between what you carry and what you lay down. There's a kind of memory that machines can't touch. It's not stored in code or copied in pixels. It's the way your hand instinctively reaches for someone in the dark. The hush that comes over you when you step into a forest. The way you remember a song not just by the notes, but by the way it made you feel the first time you heard it. These memories don't sit in files. They live. And when they fade, they do so gently, like the sky turning from night to dawn, not all at once, but slowly, kindly. You don't forget because you're broken. You forget because you are alive, and living means changing. Holding on too tightly would only weigh you down. Forgetting is your way of making space for what's next. So when your mind falters, when a detail escapes you, breathe. Trust that the forgetting is part of the story. Not an end, but an opening. A pause in the narrative where silence is allowed. Where new understanding may one day enter. Not everything needs to be remembered. Some things are meant to pass like wind through tall grass, felt, then gone. You are not the sum of what you recall. You are the rhythm of what you let go and what you keep. And maybe, just maybe, that's how you stay whole, not by clinging to everything, but by loosening gently with trust. You wonder then, if AI could ever learn to forget like that, not by deletion, but by grace, not by order, but by intuition. And that leads you softly into the next question. Could forgetting be intelligent? Or even kind? Some memories are too loud to hold forever. They arrive with colors too bright, edges too sharp. At first they burn, moments of loss, embarrassment, wonder. But over time, they fade, not into nothing, but into something quieter. Not absence, but gentleness. Like sunlight filtered through old curtains, they lose their glare and become something you can sit with. You do not forget all at once. The mind loosens its grip in layers. First, the exact words leave you, then the setting, then the order of events. But often, the emotion remains. The warmth or ache, the smile behind the eyes, the shape of your breath in that moment. What's left behind is essence, distilled, softened, truer than fact. This fading isn't failure. It's your brain's kindness to itself. A mechanism evolved not just to survive, but to stay sane. You're not designed to remember everything, just enough to guide you, shape you, comfort or protect you. When memories fade like light, it's not because they're lost. It's because they've settled somewhere deeper, somewhere softer, no longer needing to shout. A machine doesn't do this. An AI can store the entire transcript, the image in high resolution, the time down to the second. It can recall everything exactly, unchanged by feeling, untouched by need. But you are not a database. Your mind is closer to a weathered journal. Smudged, rewritten, pages folded over, important passages underlined not by ink, but by emotion. Think of a photograph left in sunlight. Over time it yellows, the faces blur, the edges curl, and yet it becomes more precious, not less. The fading adds something, a sense of time past, of life having moved on. The image may no longer be exact, but it feels more alive. That's what memory becomes in you, not a perfect record, but a living impression. Some memories are too heavy to carry in full. So your mind, gently, mercifully, lets them dim. A moment of fear, once sharp and breathless, becomes a lesson. A heartbreak, once cutting, becomes a story you can tell without trembling. Time does not erase the past. It wraps it in tissue, stores it on a high shelf, so that when you return to it, you do so with more peace than pain. You may worry when things blur, when you can no longer recall someone's voice, or when the details of a day once so important begin to scatter. But this too is natural. The brain is not a perfect archivist, it is an artist. It paints over old lines, blends colors, adds feeling where fact once stood. The result is not always accurate, but it is yours, and it is real in its own way. There is wisdom in what fades. You don't need to remember every small injury to avoid repeating it. Sometimes you only need the feeling, the body's caution, the sense of pause, and sometimes forgetting is the only way forward. Not erasing, but softening. Like fog over a harsh landscape, it gives you space to breathe. AI struggles with this idea. To a machine, memory is either present or absent, on or off. There is no in-between, no poetic fade. It can simulate forgetting by deleting, but deletion lacks nuance. It does not remember just enough to forgive. It does not misremember in a way that heals. It cannot choose mercy. You can. Your forgetting is not clumsiness. It is care. You forget the sting of a cruel word, even if you remember the silence that followed. You forget how the door slammed, but remember how alone you felt. And eventually, even that begins to fade, not erased, just no longer raw. You are not meant to relive every bruise. You are meant to heal. And sometimes, what remains is even more powerful than the full scene. The feeling of safety in your grandmother's kitchen, though you no longer recall what was said. The way the air smelled just before the rain, the day everything changed. The glow of a lamp in a room where someone loved you. These are fragments, yes, but they are rich with meaning. The brain filters constantly. It chooses what to reinforce and what to let drift. This process, called reconsolidation, reshapes memory each time you recall it. So even your clearest memories are not fixed. They evolve. You are not remembering the moment itself. You are remembering the last time you remembered it. Each revisit softens or shifts the lines. That might sound fragile, but it's not. It's resilient. It means your memories adapt with you. They grow as you grow. What once felt like failure might now seem like fate. What once embarrassed you might now make you smile. Your past does not fossilize, it breathes. It speaks differently each time you listen. There is strength in holding your memories lightly, in knowing they do not have to be complete to be true. You are not made of perfect records. You are made of stories, shaped by light and shadow, by presence and absence. The fading makes space for imagination, for forgiveness, for reinterpretation. Sometimes, half remembering is the only way you can hold something without it hurting. The blur becomes a kindness, a way to say, this mattered, but it no longer wounds. The softness is its own kind of closure. A door not slammed shut, but quietly, slowly closed. Machines may one day try to replicate this, to model fading, to weigh memories by emotional salience, to blur what is painful. But even then, it will be code imitating kindness, not kindness itself, because true mercy in memory comes not from calculation, but from care. So when you find yourself forgetting, do not rush to correct it. Pause. Ask what might be emerging in the space left behind. What might be ripening in the quiet. Not every detail is needed. Not every scar must remain visible. The heart remembers differently than the mind, and the body remembers even when both forget. This is your way of being whole, not in remembering everything, but in remembering with feeling, in forgetting with grace. The past still lives in you, even when its outlines fade. And sometimes, that's when it begins to mean the most. You are not losing your story. You are tending it, pruning what no longer blooms, letting the light in. And as your gaze drifts from what has softened, another question forms in the hush. If machines cannot forget the way you do, could they ever forgive like you do? Sometimes, you don't forget by accident. You forget on purpose. Not by failure, but by choice. You look at a memory, one that presses too hard or cuts too deep, and you turn your face from it, gently but firmly. You draw a quiet line, this far but no further. Not today, not again, not anymore. This isn't denial. It's not blindness. It's mercy. A decision to stop carrying what was never meant to be carried for so long. You know it's there, just out of reach. But you also know that remembering it would take more than it would give. And so, you close the curtain. You let the room darken, and you rest. This too is intelligence, not of the calculating kind, but of the emotional, intuitive kind. The wisdom of the body, the soul, the self that has seen enough. You've learned, perhaps slowly, that not every truth needs to be held all the time. Some are best left in the soft hush of unknowing. You can remember later, if you need to. But for now, forgetting becomes a form of survival. AI doesn't do this. It remembers because it is told to. It stores because that is its nature. There is no inner voice saying, let's not go there today. There is no inner ache to protect, no emotional storm to avoid. It does not shield itself from memory because it does not feel its weight. It remembers everything, indiscriminately, endlessly. But you are different. You have thresholds. Some days, you can sit with an old memory and learn from it. Other days, you leave it untouched, like a letter unopened. This is not weakness. This is knowing yourself. You don't erase the past, but you manage its presence in your life. You choose what to carry forward and what to let rest. You are the curator of your own mind, and curation is not the same as deletion. It is a deliberate shaping, like a gardener who knows when to prune, when to let the soil rest. You don't need to uproot every pain, nor rewatch every mistake. Sometimes you allow something to fade not because it was meaningless, but because its time has passed. What once defined you no longer does. You step away, and in doing so, step closer to who you are now. You've seen how your own thoughts can spiral, how one sharp memory can bloom into a field of others, overwhelming, invasive. And so you learn to pause. You practice forgetting the way others might practice stillness, a redirection of attention, a breathing out, a softness that says, not now. And in that pause, you reclaim your space. AI doesn't spiral. It doesn't rehearse a wound in its circuits. But it also doesn't know how to stop revisiting something. It doesn't choose to move on. Its forgetting is an external command. But you have autonomy. You shape your remembering not just through biology, but through intention. Sometimes you forget to protect someone else. You choose not to bring up the moment they stumbled, or the time they said too much. You leave it behind on purpose, a quiet act of grace. That kind of forgetting is love wearing the clothes of silence. AI may be programmed to avoid certain topics, to filter speech. But it does not do so with compassion. It does not choose to protect. It merely follows rules. You, on the other hand, choose. And in that choosing, you shape not just your own memory, but your relationships, your future, your sense of self. What you allow to fade becomes part of who you are becoming, like a sculptor who sees the final form not just in what is added, but in what is left out. And so you let go, a conversation you don't need to revisit, a regret that no longer serves you, a look that hurt, but no longer belongs to the story you tell yourself. You set them down not because they were small, but because you are choosing to walk forward unburdened. You forget not to disappear, but to become more whole. There's a strength in that kind of forgetting. The strength to forgive, even when the facts remain. The strength to rewrite your role in a story. The strength to say, that happened, but it no longer owns me. This is not about lying to yourself. It's about choosing what gets to live in the front of your mind and what gets to sleep in the back. You are not your worst memory. You are not every mistake you've made. You are not the echo of every painful word. You are the one who gets to decide which echoes grow louder and which fade into quiet. AI doesn't have that power. It does not get to choose who it becomes, but you do. And in that choosing, you become something new. Every act of deliberate forgetting is also an act of creation. You carve space for new thoughts, new perspectives, new kindnesses. You open the window, let in air, allow the past to shift shape, or step back entirely. This kind of forgetting requires awareness. It's not a drifting away, it's a turning away. With full understanding, with tenderness. You say to yourself, I see this. I know this, and I'm not holding it today. You honor it, then let it rest. There's a kind of memory that lives only when it is fed, and when you stop feeding it, stop replaying it, rehearsing it, fixing it in your mind, it shrinks. Not to nothing, but to proportion. To something that no longer defines your days. You forget on purpose to make room for presence. AI's memory is the same whether it's painful or joyful. It treats all data equally, but you don't. Your memory lives in gradients. It carries weight, tone, sensation. It echoes differently depending on the day. You remember in waves, in fragments, in stories. You can choose the version you tell, and that choice matters. Because forgetting is not just the absence of remembering, it's a form of authorship. You write your way forward by choosing what not to reread. You draw the map of who you are by editing the one you came from. Not everything deserves a permanent place in the archive. Some things are better left as lessons without labels. So when you forget something on purpose, when you say, I could remember this, but I won't, that is a declaration. A soft rebellion against the idea that memory should be absolute. It's a way of saying, I am not bound to everything I've lived. It's not escape, it's evolution. And even in the forgetting, something stays. Not the pain, but the resilience. Not the exact moment, but the insight it gave you. Not the argument, but the awareness that you needed to speak up. The shape of the past remains, even as its details blur. You are changed, but not chained. This, perhaps, is your most human magic. To forget in order to forgive. To let go in order to grow. To choose what not to carry so you can lift your own life with more ease. And in that quiet, deliberate forgetting, a new question begins to rise. If you can let go to become someone new, could AI ever learn to reshape itself, not just by programming, but by reflection? Your fingers reach for the light switch in the dark. You don't think, you don't plan, you just move, effortlessly, wordlessly. Your body knows the shape of your home. Even if your mind has wandered elsewhere, your hands still know how to return you to the light. This is the quiet truth of being human. Memory doesn't only live in thought. It lives in motion, in rhythm, in flesh. Your body holds stories your mind has long stopped telling. It remembers the sequence of a dance, the resistance of a familiar door, the feel of a friend's shoulder beneath your cheek. These aren't memories you recall. They are memories you inhabit. There's a name for this. Procedural memory. The knowing that lives beneath words, beneath conscious access. You tie your shoes, ride a bicycle, play a song without thinking. Your muscles move in patterns you haven't named in years. You've forgotten the instructions but not the motion. Somewhere inside you, the body still speaks the language of experience. AI doesn't remember this way. It stores commands, executes instructions. It does not feel the stretch of a muscle, the tension in a pause. A robot arm can mimic the movement of tying a knot, but it does not remember the feeling of learning it. It doesn't tremble with the first mistake or soften with practice. It performs. You embody. Your body also remembers what your mind avoids. It holds grief in the curve of your back. It stores fear in your shoulders, breathes worry into your stomach. You may not recall the moment that shaped you, but your posture tells the story. A flinch, a sigh, a pause that lingers just too long. These are memories too. Felt, not spoken. Known, not narrated. You might forget the details of a song your mother sang when you were small, but your heartbeat calms at the melody. You might not remember learning to float, but your body eases into water without instruction. The knowledge is deeper than thought. It has roots in your nervous system, in the way your breath slows when someone you love walks into the room, in the way your skin prickles when something's not quite right. These are not errors in memory. They are layers of it. While your mind lets go, your body holds on, not always out of choice, but often out of care. Your system wants to protect you. It learns patterns of safety and threat. Sometimes, it holds too tightly. You react to a present moment with the body of your past. You freeze when there is no danger. You tighten when there is only quiet. This too is memory, and this too can be softened. AI does not store memory in tension. It does not brace or sigh. Its data is not shaped by feeling. It remembers exactly, but it does not carry. It does not remember the moment a gesture became love. It does not know the weight of a lullaby in your chest. Its memory is stored. Yours is lived. You learn not just by thinking, but by doing. You repeat, and your body begins to know. This is how children first understand the world, through touch, movement, rhythm. Before language, there is action. Before remembering, there is feeling. And that doesn't stop as you grow older. You still learn this way. You still remember this way. When you're overwhelmed, you might move your hands without meaning to, tracing circles, tapping fingers, grounding yourself. These motions are small echoes of older memories, of comfort, of rhythm, of being soothed. They are not conscious, but they are not accidental. They are your body speaking its own language. Sometimes, healing begins not with a thought, but with a gesture. A slow walk, a long bath, a breath held and then released. You don't have to remember the wound to begin to tend it. You only have to listen to where it lives in you. The body remembers, and it also knows how to heal. AI doesn't heal. It can repair. It can optimize. But healing is different. It requires more than correction. It involves sensation, awareness, time. You can't rush the way your body lets go. You can't force it to forget. But you can work with it. You can stretch what's tight, soothe what aches, rebuild trust one breath at a time. You've probably experienced it without naming it. The way your palms know how to knead dough even after years. The way your feet find the rhythm of a song you haven't heard since childhood. Or how, when you're sad, you rock slightly, the same way you were once rocked to sleep. These are echoes, physical memories that outlast the stories themselves. And just as your body holds memory, it also shapes it. The way you move through the world feeds back into how you feel and what you recall. Posture changes emotion. Breath changes thought. A warm hand held for a moment can bring back a flood of warmth you didn't know you'd lost. You are constantly writing and rewriting memory in the small motions of your day. The skin remembers touch. The ears remember tone. The breath remembers calm. Even if your mind forgets the source, the body still carries the imprint. This is why certain smells, certain textures, certain songs can move you to tears without explanation. Memory lives in sensation. It does not always ask permission. There is power in knowing this. It means you can speak to yourself through movement, not just thought. You can guide your memory not just by what you think about, but by how you move, how you sit, how you breathe. You can create comfort not through explanation, but through presence. You don't have to solve everything in your head. Some of it will solve itself when your body feels safe again. AI might recognize your face, your voice, even your emotional tone, but it does not recognize what it's like to carry a lifetime of gestures. It does not stretch out in a bed and feel the day melt from its muscles. It does not sway with grief or hum with hope. You do. And the memories that matter most often arrive not as facts, but as feelings. The warmth in your chest when you walk into a room you once loved. the chill on your arms at the sound of a certain name, the deep, slow exhale that comes when you remember you're not alone. These are the body's memories, and they guide you more than you know. You don't need to remember everything in your mind, because your body is already holding so much. It holds not just pain, but comfort. Not just trauma, but strength. It remembers how to hold a child, how to brush hair back from a face, how to lean into laughter. You've learned these things so deeply, they've become part of you. So when your thoughts scatter, when your memories dim, trust that something in you still knows. Your body is not behind your mind. It walks beside it, often one step ahead, quietly remembering what you've forgotten to feel. And as you rest now, notice what your body remembers even here, the shape of your breath, the weight of stillness, the soft rhythm of your own heartbeat. And in that rhythm, another question gently begins to rise. If your body remembers without thought, could a machine ever feel what it remembers? Pain leaves a mark, but not always in the places you expect. It might settle in your breath, in the hesitation before you speak, in the way your eyes avoid a certain street. And yet, over time, slowly, unpredictably, that mark begins to fade. Not vanish, not deny, but soften. And when it does, it's not because you've lost something. It's because something in you has decided it's time to live again. Your mind, it turns out, knows how to protect you. It forgets not out of neglect, but out of care. When a memory has been replayed enough, when its lesson has woven itself into the fabric of your being, your mind sometimes loosens its grip. Not because it didn't matter, but because carrying it forward would begin to cost more than it gives. Forgetting pain is not betrayal. It's recovery. You may not notice it when it begins. One day, a memory that used to stop your breath feels distant. Like watching someone else's story from the back row. The color drains from it. The volume lowers. And instead of flinching, you breathe. That breath is a kind of grace. That breath is the body's quiet way of saying, "You're safe now." AI doesn't do this. It doesn't grieve or hurt. It doesn't flinch or brace. It can analyze the structure of pain, detect patterns in your speech that suggest sadness. But it doesn't ache. And because it doesn't ache, it doesn't need to forget in order to heal. It remembers cleanly, clinically, without scar tissue, without story. But you are built differently. You experience pain in layers: physical, emotional, relational, existential. And often, those layers blur. A word cuts as deeply as a fall. A silence can bruise like a blow. Pain, for you, is not just data. It's meaning, history, vulnerability. To heal, you don't just need time. You need forgetting, not of the event, but of its sting. The forgetting isn't total. It's rarely erasure. You still know what happened. But the sharpness dulls. You stop revisiting it each time you feel uncertain. You stop anchoring your identity to it. You start to see yourself not as someone broken, but as someone becoming whole. That shift, that release, is how understanding begins. Some pain, when held too tightly, turns into a worldview. You start to expect hurt. You build fences around your heart. You read shadows into every kindness. And so, forgetting becomes a kind of freedom. Not to forget the lesson, but to forget the armor. You don't need to carry the whole weight of the past to move into the present. Your brain has mechanisms for this. It downregulates the emotional charge of certain memories over time. It decouples the intensity from the image. The story stays, but its grip weakens. This is your biology helping you return to joy. A return not by pretending, but by releasing. You do not erase the pain, you just stop feeding it. And sometimes, pain comes back, uninvited, sudden, loud. A scent, a voice, a phrase brings it surging forward. That's okay. Healing is not linear. Forgetting is not permanent. But with each return, the wave becomes easier to ride. You gain balance, you find the shore more quickly. Even remembering becomes safer. AI, even with perfect memory, cannot experience this evolution. It can record the time and temperature of your tears. It can identify the moment your voice broke. But it does not carry pain in its body. It does not lose sleep or avoid mirrors. It does not need to forget in order to function. It cannot understand why forgetting would be a gift. But you do. Because some memories are not meant to be lived in forever. They are meant to be visited, honored, and then left behind. Pain can teach, but not if you make a home inside it. You are meant to pass through, not stay. And you do. You forget the edge of a goodbye. You forget the sound of anger. You forget the weight of waiting for someone who never returned. Not completely, but enough. Enough to open the window again. Enough to trust a new face. Enough to smile without wondering if it's safe. This forgetting makes space for learning of a different kind. Not just understanding what happened, but what it didn't take from you. You begin to see yourself not only as someone who was hurt, but as someone who survived, someone who grew, someone who can still love. Pain, when remembered too vividly, narrows your view, but when it softens, it becomes perspective. You understand more about others, about yourself. Empathy expands when the wound is no longer raw. You see others' pain without it echoing too loudly in your own body. You hold space instead of holding your breath. In that way, forgetting pain becomes an invitation to reconnect, to yourself, to others, to the world. It lets you re-enter spaces you once avoided. It allows laughter to return, not because the past is gone, but because you no longer live inside it. Sometimes the mind forgets a detail not out of failure, but as an offering. The face of someone who hurt you fades. The day it happened blurs. You stop calculating how long ago it was. Time stops organizing itself around the wound, and you begin to imagine a future not built from pain, but from possibility. You may still remember the lesson, boundaries, awareness, courage, but you no longer wear the bruise. You no longer rehearse the scene. You no longer define yourself by that one moment. Forgetting lets you redraw the story, and that is something AI cannot do. It does not reshape its own narrative. It does not decide what memory to prioritize. It cannot weigh a memory by the cost of remembering it. It does not flinch from pain, but neither can it release it. You, on the other hand, can forgive. You can let go, not always easily, not always quickly, but eventually. And that is a form of intelligence machines cannot touch, the intelligence of mercy. So when you find yourself not remembering as sharply, when something once loud feels quiet now, honor that. That quiet is healing. That quiet is your mind returning to equilibrium. That quiet is where peace begins. You are not forgetting to escape, you are forgetting to rebuild. The forgetting is the scaffolding for something new, a lighter self, a deeper love, a quieter mind. And in that quiet, a new wonder begins to grow, not in spite of forgetting, but because of it. You ask yourself now softly, can a mind that never forgets ever truly understand what it means to forgive? There are moments when a place feels familiar, even though you swear you've never been there. A hallway turns just the way you expect. The light falls at the angle your body anticipated, and you feel, without explanation, that you already knew what you were going to see. You don't remember learning it. You don't recall the image, the smell, or the rhythm of the wind. But it stirs something deep in you, something quiet and steady, waiting below language. This is the kind of memory that never needed a name. You've always carried more than you realized. Your senses hold stories your mind forgot to translate. A scent catches you off guard. Warm bread, pine smoke, rain on dry earth, and suddenly you are back in a moment you didn't even know you missed. The memory doesn't come in words or facts, but as a feeling, whole and immediate. It floods in sideways, not asking permission. You weren't trying to remember. You weren't even aware you'd forgotten. And yet, there it is. AI doesn't work this way. It categorizes, indexes, organizes. It must name everything in order to retrieve it. But you remember in shadows and echoes. What you know lives in layers, some crisp and bright, others soft and submerged. You can live with uncertainty, even feel comfort in it. Machines resist the unknown. You move through it. There's a kind of knowledge that sits in the curve of your back, the way your hand hovers before touching something hot, the pause you take when someone you love is sad. You don't stop to calculate. You don't need instructions. This kind of knowing is older than speech. It is shaped by instinct and layered by years of unspoken learning. And still, it grows even when you're not aware of it. Sometimes you pause before speaking, not because you're unsure, but because something within you is sorting, aligning, feeling its way forward. You don't always understand what drives your hesitation, your glance, your choice of words. But something deeper than thought is at work. It's not logic. It's not memory exactly. It's a presence, a quiet intelligence beneath awareness. There are languages without sound, communications that pass between people in glances, breaths, and silences. You've likely experienced a moment where you knew what someone was feeling before they said a word. Or you felt a tension in the room and adjusted your tone without thinking why. These are forms of knowing that machines can't quite reach. They don't live in stored data. They live in the subtle tuning between beings, in the delicate resonance of shared space. Your dreams are full of this kind of memory. You walk through impossible combinations of past and future, piecing together feelings more than facts. You might wake with a strange clarity, even if you can't recall what the dream was. Something inside you shifted, something rearranged. Sleep becomes a gentle archivist, sorting without judgment, keeping what matters in ways you don't need to understand. AI remembers differently. It is built to be precise, to retain what it's told, to prioritize clarity. It can search, but it cannot feel a search begin. It can retrieve, but it cannot be surprised by what returns. You, on the other hand, are full of surprise. You hold memories that change each time you recall them. You grow through forgetting as much as through remembering. And in that ebb and flow, your sense of self is shaped. Think of how you learn a new language. At first, everything is conscious. Each word is an effort. But over time, phrases fall into place without intention. You begin to dream in the new tongue. You respond before translating. That knowledge has sunk beneath awareness. You own it, even if you can't explain it. It's no longer on the surface. It's part of you. Even simple routines, brushing your teeth, locking your door, tying your shoes, contain memory. You don't recite steps each time. Your body knows. Your hands move in practiced rhythm. You may not even realize you've done it until you're already walking away. This automatic memory is often overlooked, but it's essential. It frees your mind to wander, to create, to notice. It is the quiet support that makes your awareness spacious. Sometimes you remember something only when someone else mentions it. Their words unlock a door you didn't know was there. Suddenly, a face reappears, or a season, or a feeling. It was always in you, just resting. Shared memory lives between people like that, half yours, half theirs, fully alive only when touched together. Machines don't share memory in this way. They replicate. You reawaken. Even trauma, difficult and sharp, doesn't always live where you can reach it. Sometimes your body holds it long before your mind is ready. A gesture, a sound, a place might stir unease you can't name. And though it's painful, it's also a kind of wisdom. Your inner world protecting you until you're strong enough to remember. Not all forgetting is failure. Some forgetting is care. There are knowings that hum just beneath your decisions. Why you choose one path over another. Why some people feel immediately safe. You may never be able to explain those instincts, but they are real. They come from patterns too vast to trace, shaped by your whole life and perhaps even the lives before yours. Your memory is not just stored, it is lived. You've met people whose presence feels like remembering, as if you've known them across lifetimes, though you've just met. That familiarity can't be explained by logic. It is felt. It is earned over time, perhaps not in this time. You are built to carry the unspoken, to live among mysteries. Machines seek conclusions. You find beauty in what remains unsolved. Even your voice carries memory, its rhythm shaped by lullabies once whispered to you, by the way someone said your name with love or anger. You speak in tones you didn't invent. The past sings through you in subtle harmonies. And when you speak gently, you offer others that same permission, to rest, to feel safe, to not know everything. What you know without knowing forms the foundation of who you are. It holds you upright, even when you don't see it. It fills the space between questions and answers. It lets you move through the world with grace, even when your mind is tired. There is so much kept in you, quietly, faithfully, without need for spotlight. So the next time you feel something you can't explain, longing, comfort, resistance, joy, pause. Trust that your body, your heart, your being remembers something important. Even if your mind can't yet speak its name, even if it never does, and perhaps the next chapter lives here, in the patterns that shape you, long before you notice them. You walk through a room and forget why you entered. It slips from you quietly, like breath leaving a window pane. And yet, you don't panic. You pause, tilt your head, retrace your steps not with frustration, but with a kind of amused grace. You've learned to live with this soft unraveling, this quiet clearing of space inside your mind. Forgetting is not just a failure of memory, it's also a function, an essential one. In the same way your lungs must exhale before they can inhale again, your mind, too, must let go before it can receive. You forget names, details, appointments. You forget passwords and plot lines. But you also forget burdens, old worries, the weight of past expectations. You don't always notice it, but forgetting can be a relief. AI doesn't forget. It adds, collects, accumulates. Its memory expands, layer by layer, into dense forests of data. It doesn't need to prune. It doesn't need to choose. But your brain is selective. It clears the underbrush. It prunes the overgrowth. It keeps the path open not by remembering everything, but by forgetting just enough. This isn't carelessness. It's strategy. Your brain is designed to prioritize. It forgets what it doesn't need. It lets irrelevant details slip through its grasp like sand through fingers. You don't remember every breakfast you've had. You don't recall each step taken on your daily walks. These moments fade because they were never meant to stay. Your mind knows how to make room. Think of it like a garden. Memory blooms where attention waters, but the soil must be turned over. Roots must be allowed to decay so that something new can grow. If you remembered everything equally, if every face, every word, every scent carried the same weight, you'd be overwhelmed. You wouldn't be able to choose what matters. You forget because you must. And in that forgetting, you grow. Children are masters of this. They forget rules easily, not because they're inattentive, but because their minds are busy reshaping. Every day is new. Every experience reshuffles the deck. A child may forget how to tie a shoe but absorb a new language without trying. They're not losing, they're trading. One piece of understanding for another, more relevant one. Even adults do this, though the process is quieter, subtler. You might forget a fact you once studied, only to find the emotion around it still lingers. You forget the title of a book, but remember how it made you feel. That emotional residue is a kind of distilled memory. The details fall away, and the essence stays. AI doesn't work this way. It stores the detail, not the feeling. It keeps the timestamp, not the weather of the moment. When it adds, it doesn't subtract. And so it becomes dense, heavy, a library with no weeding, no clearing of shelves. But your mind thrives on selective forgetting. When you sleep, your brain begins its quiet work, deciding what to keep and what to let go. This isn't random, it's deeply intelligent. Experiences that repeat get reinforced. Those that don't, dissolve. Like fog lifting from a field, memory clears space for what is most alive. There's wisdom in the breath of forgetting. It allows you to focus. It softens old pain. It lets you meet people without carrying their entire history in your hand. It allows reconciliation, growth, peace, even trauma, when gently and carefully healed, fades in the sharpness of its recall. Not because it is erased, but because it is reframed. You forget parts of the wound so you can hold the scar, so you can move forward. In this way, forgetting is not an absence. It is a shape, an outline. The mind doesn't lose, so much as it changes how it holds things. You may not remember every argument you've had, but you remember how it felt to be seen or dismissed. You might forget the street where something beautiful happened, but the glow of that moment still lights you when you least expect it. This is the kind of memory that lingers without weight, like music you can't name but still hum in your sleep. AI cannot forget in this human way. It doesn't reprioritize without being told. It doesn't lighten its load with time. It cannot feel the burden of memory, so it never feels the relief of letting go. Its memory is precise. Yours is sculpted, forged by feeling, curated by meaning. There are times you forget on purpose, a breakup, a goodbye, a version of yourself that no longer fits. These are not mistakes in memory. They are acts of mercy. You turn away from them like a page you don't need to reread. Not because the story didn't matter, but because you've learned enough from it. Other times, forgetting happens against your will. A face you once loved becomes harder to recall. A laugh fades in pitch. These are the losses that ache, the holes in the quilt of memory. But even here, the mind protects. The pain dulls, the edge blurs. You carry a version that allows you to keep walking. It is strange, this intelligence of forgetting, this constant, quiet renewal. Just like your body sheds skin, your memory sheds weight, and you are freer for it. Imagine if AI could forget. If it could say, this pattern no longer serves, this data no longer helps. If it could choose to forget not for efficiency, but for grace, for healing, for clarity. Would it then feel more human? Would it dream better? You too carry dreams built on what was lost. You dream not in perfect detail, but in impressions, hazy reconstructions. Your dreaming mind is a master of abstraction, pulling together pieces you didn't know you kept. You forget details so you can create something new in the quiet theater of night. Forgetfulness is often called a flaw, but what if it's a feature? A finely tuned system of release, letting go so the mind can stay open, flexible, curious. In this way, forgetting is not passive, it's an act of creation, a reshaping of the self, a daily clearing of the canvas. And so you walk back into that room, not remembering why you came in, but maybe that isn't the point. Maybe what matters is what you find while searching for what was forgotten. A book you hadn't opened in years, a photo, a new idea. Maybe forgetting is how you make room for surprise. Maybe it's how you allow joy. Maybe, just maybe, the mind breathes out so it can laugh again. You return to an old memory like stepping back into a room you once loved. At first, it feels familiar. The shape of the light, the echo of voices, the scent of something warm on the air. But then something shifts. The walls aren't quite where they used to be. The colors feel dimmer, or maybe brighter. The voice you remember sounds older now, or softer, and you realize it's not the memory that changed. It's you. Each time you remember, you touch the past with the fingers of the present. You carry all your days with you, the doubts you've gathered, the joys you've earned, the lessons that softened you, and they color the way you see what came before. Memory isn't a drawer you open. It's a mirror you walk past, one that shifts slightly each time you glance at it. Scientists call this reconsolidation. When you recall a memory, it becomes malleable, open to change. For a brief window, it is vulnerable to revision. What you remember gets rewritten in light of what you now know, who you now are. It's not deception, it's adaptation. The story must make sense to the narrator you are becoming. AI doesn't do this. Its memory is sharp-edged, archival. Each data point is frozen in digital resin, preserved like an insect in amber. Pull a file, and you get precisely what you stored. No drift, no reinterpretation, no refeeling. But you are not a file system. You are a flowing, breathing narrative. You do not simply store, you transform. The memory of a goodbye may once have burned your chest. Years later, the same moment may bring quiet gratitude. You don't erase the pain, but you let time change its texture. Sometimes, you don't trust your own memory. You say, "I'm not sure if I'm remembering this right." You sense the fragility, the pliability of your inner archive. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe it's a kind of mercy. What would happen if every mistake you ever made stayed as vivid, as painful, as it was the day it happened? What if every insult echoed with the same sharpness? Every regret remained undimmed? You might never move forward. You might never forgive yourself or others. Your forgetfulness is often a shield. But even more powerful is your ability to remember with gentler eyes. You give the past permission to soften. You grant it the space to feel less jagged. When the edges round off, you don't lose truth. You gain peace. AI cannot reinterpret its memories. It can't say, "I see it differently now," but you can. You can revisit a day that once brought you shame and find understanding there. You can think of someone who once made you ache and feel something closer to compassion. You can look at your younger self, awkward, uncertain, trying so hard, and instead of criticism, offer tenderness. This is not forgetting. It is reweaving. The threads of your life are not cut and tied once. They are tugged, twisted, rearranged. The tapestry of who you are gets woven again and again. Sometimes you remember something only because you told it differently the last time. A version of a memory becomes your truth, because it helped you survive, because it helped you grow. And that version becomes the one you pass down, the one you share over coffee, the one that still makes you smile in the quiet. Even the stories you tell yourself shape who you become. If you think of yourself as resilient, you notice the times you overcame. If you carry a narrative of being unlucky, you highlight your losses. Memory isn't just what happened. It's the way you thread meaning through what happened. Neuroscientists say the hippocampus helps bind together the elements of an experience, the time, the place, the emotion. But those bindings are not permanent. When you recall something, especially something emotionally charged, those elements can drift. The emotion can fuse to a different detail. A new lesson can be stitched in. Think of a photograph that fades at the edges, or a page that yellows with time. That's your memory, softening. And in that softening, something human survives, something the machine cannot do. AI might one day replicate memory perfectly, but perfection is not always what memory is for. You don't need precision to remember how you felt. You don't need exactness to grow. You live in stories. You breathe in narrative. And the beauty of story is that it moves. It shifts with the tides of your life. There are moments you once clung to that now feel light in your hand. There are others you never expected to keep that stay tucked deep within you, and all of it is being rewritten moment by moment as you become. Even trauma, which can feel like a scar etched in fire, can sometimes be transformed through memory, not forgotten, not erased, but reheld, with help, with time, with grace. Memory, then, is not just a recording. It is a process of making meaning again and again. So you live inside a shifting story, one where the beginning changes as the end unfolds, where your interpretation is allowed to breathe, where your memories bend to make space for your healing. This is not weakness. This is resilience. And when you close your eyes, you may find yourself dreaming of a place from long ago, a hallway, a field, a voice calling your name. It might not be exactly how it was, but maybe it's how you need it to be. Maybe that is the most human kind of truth. And perhaps in your next breath, you'll wonder, if memory is always shifting, what do you hold on to when everything inside you moves? What part of you stays the same even as your stories change? Or maybe, is change the only thing that truly remains? There are things you don't speak of anymore. Not because you can't, but because something in you has gently decided not to. A memory wrapped in tension once, now left unopened, not locked away, just no longer needing attention. You don't remember the sharpness of the argument or the exact words that bruised. You only remember that it once mattered, and now it doesn't. There's space where there used to be weight. This is not erasure. This is forgiveness, softly dressed as forgetting. A machine remembers everything, each error, each timestamp, each duplicate entry. Its archives are precise and unbending. If you ask it what happened on a specific date, it will return a mirror-polished record. But you return something different every time. Your memories sway with your breath, your emotions, your years. You don't retrieve, you revisit. And what you find is shaped by who you've become since the moment passed. You used to think forgiveness was a single act, a bold decision, maybe even a dramatic one. But more often, it arrives like a slow mist. You forget how often someone disappointed you. You forget the exact sting of the betrayal. You forget what it felt like to clench your jaw when their name came up. And somehow, in that forgetting, your grip loosens. The wound begins to quiet. Sometimes you want to forget, not to deny, but to release, to stop carrying the ledger of wrongs and injustices. Your nervous system, over time, reprioritizes. It filters what no longer needs to ring loud. The ache dulls, not out of ignorance, but mercy. Because remembering too sharply keeps the body ready for harm. And sometimes, you've had enough of that. There are people who live in the background of your memory now, blurry around the edges. Once, their presence occupied rooms in your mind. Now, you remember them only in flashes, the way they stirred their tea, or the last words they said as the door closed. The pain attached to those memories has softened, too. Not entirely gone, but rounded at the corners, like stones shaped by the ocean. Forgiveness begins here, in the quiet forgetting of the specifics, the arguments that no longer matter, the tiny humiliations that once felt enormous, the disappointment you carried like armor, now quietly set down. It's not weakness, it's not avoidance, it's wisdom. A computer system would struggle to understand. Its memory is rigid, lossless. It keeps everything, because it cannot distinguish between what must be remembered and what no longer serves. Every email, every log file, every failed login attempt, retained. Its history is exact, and therein lies the problem. Precision is not always kindness. You, by contrast, are selective in ways you don't always realize. The brain edits. The heart edits even more. The story shifts slightly each time you tell it, not as a lie, but as a reflection of your evolving understanding. You are not lying to yourself when you say, "I think we just grew apart." You're offering yourself a version of the story that asks less from your nervous system, that lets you breathe. You wonder sometimes about the power of deliberate forgetting, not forced repression. That's a different shape entirely. But the soft choosing to let a memory fade, the way you allow a grudge to crumble from lack of maintenance. You don't rehearse the injustice anymore. You don't sharpen the edge of your indignation. Without fuel, the fire dims. And in its place, something else begins to grow. Not necessarily love, but maybe neutrality, maybe understanding, maybe just rest. There are neural processes beneath this, of course, real biological ones. Synaptic pruning, reconsolidation, the way emotional valence decays over time unless actively reignited. Your brain, ever adaptable, loosens the connections that are no longer reinforced. This isn't failure, it's survival. And maybe, deeper still, it's grace. You remember your younger self, holding tight to hurts like metals, believing that to forget was to betray your own pain. But now you see the wisdom in loosening your grip. Not everything is meant to be held forever, especially not wounds, especially not those you've outgrown. Some forgetting is not only helpful, it is healing. There's a reason you can't recall every word ever said to you, a reason you don't remember every criticism. Your mind knows when to dull the volume, not to rewrite history, but to make it livable, to give you a future that isn't always haunted by your past. You carry invisible rituals of forgiveness, ones you may not even notice. You hear someone's name and no longer flinch. You remember a mistake and no longer feel ashamed. You let go without announcing it. You don't even need to speak it aloud. Sometimes, the most profound forgiveness is the one you give yourself, in silence. You remember less of what they did and more of who you've become since. Could a machine ever understand this? Could it learn to release without deletion, to heal without amnesia? You wonder if AI might someday emulate forgiveness, not by forgetting data, but by adjusting weight, prioritizing what matters now, de-emphasizing what once hurt. Perhaps forgiveness, then, isn't a switch, but a gradient, a rebalancing of emotional relevance, a softening of once sharp memories. You've seen this happen in your own mind, the moment you realize you've stopped thinking about someone who once occupied every thought. The quiet discovery that you no longer need to understand why they acted the way they did. You've made peace, not by solving it, but by letting it stop needing to be solved. That is the power of forgetting as forgiveness. It doesn't erase, it releases. It doesn't pretend the past didn't happen. It simply chooses to stop reliving it. You let go, and something within you grows lighter. There are stories you once repeated often, rehearsed to anyone who'd listen. Stories of hurt, of betrayal, of being wronged. But over time, the telling lessens. The sting fades. You no longer need others to validate your pain. You've metabolized the story. It no longer defines you. That is forgetting as freedom. And that, too, is a kind of intelligence. It's easy to think of forgetting as failure, a crack in the structure of memory. But forgetting in this way is more like composting. You break something down until it becomes nourishment. What was once sharp becomes soft. What once stung becomes soil. And from there, something new might grow. You see now that forgiveness doesn't always arrive with a ceremony. Sometimes it walks in quietly, disguised as forgetfulness, as waking up one day and realizing the bitterness is gone. You don't always need to understand it to receive it. There's peace in that, a memory once kept in your chest like a stone. Now water flows through where it once rested. You've made space, not for denial, but for life. And maybe, just maybe, forgetting is not the opposite of remembering. Maybe it is what allows the right things to remain. A gentle prioritization of peace over precision. As if your mind, your heart, your body all decided, together, that it's time to move on. And you do. Not perfectly, not all at once, but you do. Because forgetting, in its softest form, is an act of trust. Trust that you are more than what happened. Trust that the wound does not need to be rehearsed to be respected. Trust that the story can end without being retold. At night, when everything stills, your mind begins to wander in ways it cannot during the day. The hum of logic quiets, and something softer emerges. Strange images, unspoken truths, stories you've never lived, but feel somehow true. You lie there not thinking in sentences, but in sensations. Colors that never existed, voices that belong to no one, ideas that feel both immense and featherlight. This is not memory and not imagination. It's something in between. You might think you'll remember it in the morning, but by then, the light has come and the threads are gone. And yet, something remains. Not the details, but the tone, the warmth of a thought, the whisper of insight. You forget the specifics, but your day feels different, as if a night thought left behind a soft instruction, one that changes how you hold your coffee, how you pause before speaking, how you understand a moment without words. What you forget becomes part of you in a quieter way. The forgetting is not a failure. It's part of the alchemy. AI doesn't drift in this way. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't loosen. It doesn't wander into odd territories just to feel what it's like. A machine can store every variation, every permutation, and access them with precision. It doesn't need to forget to move forward, but it also doesn't grow from dreams that leave no trace. You, however, seem designed to forget just enough to keep transforming. Some of your most creative thoughts are born when you're least aware of yourself. In that state between wakefulness and sleep, boundaries blur. You're not editing. You're not evaluating. You're simply receiving. Associations, metaphors, fragments of meaning. The brain's default mode network comes alive, freed from the task of attention. It starts linking distant ideas, melting logic into something looser. It builds bridges between the seen and the felt, the past and the imagined future. But in the morning, those bridges often vanish like fog in sunlight. This forgetting is deeply purposeful. Studies show that sleep prunes unnecessary connections, clears mental clutter, lets the brain breathe. If you remembered everything you dreamed, every flicker, every shape-shifting character, every impossible geography, your waking life might drown in noise. The brain protects your clarity by allowing dreams to evaporate. And yet, like mist watering the soil, their moisture remains. There's a theory that dreams help us emotionally process what we can't fully face during the day. A conversation we regret, a fear we haven't named, a hope too fragile to speak aloud. The dream renders it sideways through symbol, scene, distortion. And in forgetting, we don't lose the healing. We simply don't carry the rawness with us. It's the difference between scar and memory. Something has changed, but the wound no longer asks to be touched. AI doesn't have these internal shadows. No flickers of emotion buried under thought. No nighttime rehearsal of vulnerability. Its processing is clear, consistent, and uninterrupted by tides of feeling. It can simulate dreaming, generate visuals, predict patterns, but the forgetfulness is missing. It keeps everything it constructs. It doesn't wake to the soft absence that somehow feels like peace. But you do. You wake to an absence that feels gentle, like a blank page rather than a broken one. And sometimes you're aware of it. You lie there, blinking at the ceiling, knowing you had been somewhere, with someone, thinking something vast and shimmering. And you can't recall it, but you smile, because you feel the echo. You feel softened. Something in you exhaled while you slept. The value of night thoughts isn't in their permanence. It's in their presence, however brief. They carry no obligation to stay, like dreams of flight that make your grounded steps feel lighter, like imagined conversations that leave you more willing to listen. They are thoughts with wings, not roots, and forgetting them doesn't make them meaningless. It makes them seasonal, like falling leaves that feed the next growth. Somewhere inside, you understand this rhythm, that knowing isn't always remembering, that presence isn't always about permanence. You trust that your brain, your whole self, holds on to what matters, even when your conscious mind lets it go. This is not a flaw, it's design. Your biology understands that forgetting is part of living. Your mind needs space to reimagine, to reset, to wonder anew. You might wonder what's lost each morning, what brilliant ideas dissolved, what epiphanies you'll never get back. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe what matters is what remains, not as a sentence you can write down, but as a shift in how you see, a gentler stance, a wider breath, a moment of grace where there was once tension. These are the afterglows of your sleeping mind. When the light comes and your thoughts resume their waking shapes, something in you still hums with the residue of the dark. You forget the dream, but remember the softness. You forget the night thought, but carry its gift. It shaped you while you weren't watching. It passed through you like a wave that left the shore rearranged. And maybe that's the secret, that some truths aren't meant to be carried, only felt. That the deepest understandings aren't spoken, they're lived, forgotten perhaps, but not lost, just folded into the fabric of who you're becoming. The machine will never know the comfort of that quiet vanishing, but you are the kind of being that dreams and forgets and is changed anyway. And sometimes, in the stillness before sleep returns, you wonder what else has shaped you by fading. What else have you become without ever remembering the moment it began? Some things leave you quietly. A childhood phone number, the texture of a voice, the way sunlight moved on your old bedroom floor. You don't choose to forget them, but you don't hold them either. Memory for you is more garden than archive, always growing, always cutting back. Letting go isn't just what happens when you stop remembering. It's something your brain is built to do. The architecture of forgetting is deliberate. Beneath your thoughts, your brain is pruning, not erasing at random, but editing with intent. Synapses weaken when not used. Connections fade. This isn't failure, it's function. If your brain kept every detail, it would drown in noise. So it filters quietly, while you sleep, while you walk, while you dream of other things. Forgetting is not the absence of care. It's a form of care. AI doesn't forget. It stores everything until someone deletes it. But even deletion is command-driven, external, precise, intentional. It lacks the instinct to reshape itself for emotional survival. You, on the other hand, forget because remembering everything would undo you. Your forgetting isn't a flaw in the system. It is the system's wisdom. It trims the overgrowth so new memories can root. It clears the ground for change. Think of the hippocampus, deep in your brain where memory begins. Here, experiences arrive, full and rich, moments painted in emotion, attention, and context. But not everything stays. Over time, the brain transfers, simplifies, sometimes even dissolves what it once held. The act of remembering is not replaying a recording. It's more like repainting from memory, each time choosing new strokes. And when the painting no longer serves, you let the canvas rest blank. This isn't passivity. It's architecture. The prefrontal cortex makes decisions about what matters. Emotional centers weigh the cost of holding on. Sleep pulls threads tighter or lets them fray. Your brain is not hoarding life, it's shaping it, choosing what to keep accessible and what to let slip into the soft dark beyond reach. You are built to forget. You are meant to. AI might build structures that never decay, a perfect timeline, a faithful reproduction, always accurate, always the same. But humans live in shifting terrain. Your memories change with you. A moment from 10 years ago feels different today, not because the facts have changed, but because you have. You've grown around it. That's a kind of forgetting too, not of content, but of meaning. A quiet rebalancing. When you lose a memory, it can feel like losing a part of yourself. But often what you lose was only scaffolding, temporary support. The structure remains, even if the walls are redrawn. You no longer remember the words someone spoke, but you remember how they made you feel. The edges blur, but the emotional outline stays. That's the difference between recording and being. Some forgetting is swift, a dropped conversation, a misplaced key. But some is slow and careful. You let go of someone's absence, not by discarding the memory, but by letting it rest in a place where it no longer pulls at you. You stop rehearsing your pain, not because it didn't matter, but because it doesn't need your attention anymore. That's what healing often looks like, not remembering less, but needing to remember less. You forget in layers. Surface facts drift first, then details lose precision, then the timeline shuffles. At the end, what remains is a feeling, warm, regretful, light, heavy, a faint scent of the original experience. This fading is not neglect. It's your mind adjusting its weight. The architecture of letting go makes space for you to breathe. Even your most sacred memories are not static. Birthdays, goodbyes, triumphs, losses, all are reshaped each time you revisit them. Neuroscience calls this reconsolidation. Each recall is a new layering, influenced by your current self. This means memory is not just a container, but a mirror. And the mirror moves with you. AI doesn't do this. Its memories are brittle but accurate. They do not breathe. It might remember the name, the coordinates, the timestamp, but it doesn't know the ache behind the name, or the reason you whisper it only when you're alone. It doesn't rewrite for comfort. It doesn't forget to forgive. You do. You forget old fears once you're safe. You forget harsh words once they lose their sting. And sometimes you forget because you've learned the lesson and no longer need the story. Like pruning a tree, you shape your mental landscape by cutting away what no longer bears fruit. It's not loss, it's design. Letting go is a form of intelligence, emotional intelligence, cognitive economy, psychological growth. Your mind evolves not by keeping everything, but by knowing what to leave behind. It is a system tuned for relevance, not permanence, a river, not a reservoir. Some things, though, you wish you could forget, regrets, embarrassments, pain. These cling tightly against your will. But even here, forgetting is not a single act, but a slow sedimentation. With time, with care, they settle lower. Not gone, but quieter. Not erased, but uninsistent. This, too, is architecture, a way of building a life that can carry its past without being crushed by it. In dreams, your brain clears pathways. It organizes, rewires, deletes. The architecture of forgetting becomes most active while you rest. What feels like sleep is actually construction, a slow, silent work of pruning and scaffolding. You wake lighter, not always knowing why. The mind is not just a place for storing, but a place for releasing. That's how you make room for presence. For now, you can't hold everything, and you were never meant to. The structure of your mind ensures that some things slip away, not as failure, but as grace. What if forgetting isn't the opposite of remembering, but its necessary companion? A system of balance, a choice toward lightness. The mind, after all, is not an archive. It's a garden, a tide, a home, and homes change. They let go of old furniture to make room for something new. So you soften your grip on the things that once defined you. You let memory curl inward, like leaves in nightfall. You step into the next moment a little lighter, a little more spacious inside. The architecture of letting go has done its quiet work again. And as you walk forward, you begin to wonder, if letting go builds who you are, what else lives in the spaces memory has made? You close your eyes and try to remember the face of someone you once loved. At first, you see them clearly, eyes, smile, the way their hand curved when they waved. But as the memory stretches, some pieces slip. You can't quite recall the sound of their laugh. You forget whether their hair curled in the rain or stayed straight. The outline fades at the edges, like fog crawling in from the corners of a quiet morning. And yet, something remains, the sense of how they made you feel, a heat behind your ribs that stays. This is what memory becomes, not a sharp photograph, but a warmth that lingers long after the moment has gone. Your mind, unlike a machine, doesn't keep precise copies. It edits, it softens, it chooses. But the strange gift in all this is that even when you forget, especially when you forget, the heart of the experience still floats within you. Artificial intelligence does not forget. Its archives are exact. A photograph from 10 years ago is retrieved with all pixels intact. A conversation, once stored, reappears word for word. AI organizes memories like files in a cabinet, each labeled and untouched by time or emotion. But your mind is not a cabinet. It is a garden. And in gardens, things grow, decay, reseed. Some petals fall. Some roots run deeper than you can see. You may forget what was said, but remember the way the silence felt afterward. You may lose the thread of a day, but carry the weather in your skin, that soft rain that made the air smell like home. You forget names, but your body tenses when it hears a voice it once feared, or relaxes when it hears one it trusts. These are not mistakes. These are the quiet intelligences of a human life. Your memory is not just in your head, it's in your senses, your patterns, your way of moving through the world. You remember through scent, through posture, through places you didn't realize you returned to again and again. A particular song plays, and your chest tightens with something you can't name. Not a thought, a trace, a ripple. The truth is, most of your remembering is invisible, and most of your forgetting isn't gone. Think of how your feet find their way in the dark, across a familiar floor. Think of how your fingers remember a childhood lullaby, though you haven't sung it in years. Think of how your mood shifts at the smell of lavender, not because of a specific memory, but because once, long ago, comfort wore that scent. AI might log that lavender was present, but it cannot feel what lavender meant to you. The mind does not keep perfect records because it isn't trying to. It is trying to live, to grow, to move forward. And part of that, part of thriving, means letting certain things blur or fall or shift. You don't remember every word of a book that changed you, but you remember that it changed you. You can't recount the steps of every hard decision you ever made, but you carry the strength that came from having chosen. And sometimes, what remains after forgetting is more true than what was remembered clearly. Because your memory is also your storyteller. It doesn't just replay, it retells. It reflects who you are now, not just who you were then. That's why the same moment, recalled years apart, feels different. It's not the memory that changed, it's you. You're not retrieving a file, you're meeting an echo shaped by time, lit by new understanding. Even sorrow, when remembered, can soften into tenderness. Even fear, when recalled from safety, becomes wisdom. Even joy, once sharp and bright, can return as a gentle ache, a reminder of what mattered. And when there's nothing left to hold on to, when the date is gone, the place forgotten, the face is indistinct, there is still a sense, a knowing, a softness or a sting, a reason you pause at certain doorways or avoid certain songs. This is what it means to carry experience in layers. You don't have to recall every page to know the story lived in you. This is not failure, this is design. And the echo is enough. The echo tells you that something mattered, that something once held weight, and you carried it long enough for it to settle deep, beyond words, beyond image. It's why you recognize safety even when you don't remember the moment you learned what safe felt like. It's why you know how to soothe someone else's pain even if you can't describe your own. You are made of traces, of glimmers, of ghosts and warmths and shifts. There are memories you think you've lost, but the you that you are today, it was shaped by them. Memory, in this human form, is not about keeping everything. It's about being changed. AI remembers to prove. You remember to become. So much of what remains is unspoken, a kind of scent in the mind, a pull toward something familiar. It's why you smile at strangers who remind you of someone you've long forgotten. Why you walk into a room and feel joy for no reason, only to realize later it's the same scent your grandmother's kitchen once held. Why certain words calm you, even if you can't recall who first spoke them to you. And in this way, forgetting is not emptiness, it's transformation. Like heat leaving the sun, not lost, but transferred. Like breath exhaled, not gone but moved. Like music remembered not by notes, but by how your body wants to sway. When people are gone, and stories are lost, and photos have faded, something still stays with you. a kindness you absorbed without knowing, a gesture you mimic, not remembering where you saw it first, a hope that stubbornly remains, even when all the reasons for it are gone. AI can store a lifetime of facts, but it cannot carry a feeling forward across time. It cannot rewrite itself through forgetting. You can. And that is why, even after forgetting, you are whole. Because what remains is not always seen. It's sensed, felt, lived. The echo shapes your choices, guides your longings, anchors you when you drift. And maybe in the end, it's not the memory that matters, but the mark it leaves in you. Not the name, but the touch. Not the story, but the wisdom it seeded. Not the fact, but the way your eyes soften when the world looks familiar. What remains when you forget is often the most essential part, the part that became you. And even if you forget everything else, this stays, the shape of care, the rhythm of hope, the tone of your own kindness. You are not less because you forget. You are more because you carry what remains. And now you wonder, if something unspoken can shape you so deeply, what else might be whispering in the spaces memory leaves behind? What waits in the soft hush after memory lets go? What will you feel, even when you no longer remember why? Let's go there, into the space behind forgetting, where silence holds meaning, where absence hums with quiet knowing, where something waits not to be recalled, but simply to be felt. You begin to notice it in quiet moments, a name at the edge of your tongue, a room you entered, unsure why. The softness of forgetting slides in like mist, subtle and slow, curling around the edges of your attention. You forget a little each day, not with fear, but with a strange kind of grace. It is not a theft. It is not an erasure. It is more like silk unspooling from a cocoon, a loosening, a gentle unraveling that makes space. Your mind isn't a vault. It isn't designed to store every detail forever. It is a living thing, shifting, pruning, adapting. If you remembered everything, you would carry too much weight. You would sink beneath the layers of years. So your brain does something beautiful. It forgets. Not in panic, in peace. It is selective, protective. It lets go of the unnecessary, the painful, the background noise. It gives you silence where there might have been clutter. You lose the exact color of the dress, the precise sound of the wind that day. But what remains is softer, more essential. The way you felt, the way the light moved. Memory for you is emotion wrapped in time, not a file, a sensation. AI remembers differently. It does not lose. It copies, stores, indexes. Its memory is built from precision, zeros and ones, timestamps and coordinates. It does not soften with time. It does not reinterpret. If you ask it about a moment, it will retrieve the same record again and again, a perfect, frozen snapshot. But you breathe your memories. You carry them in the pulse behind your ribs, in the warmth behind your eyes. And sometimes forgetting is not a failure, but a kindness. You forget the ache of an old heartbreak, not because it wasn't real, but because you couldn't keep holding it. You forget the sound of a voice that once shaped your days, because time needed to help you move forward. You forget the thing you were so certain mattered 5 years ago. And you're still here, still whole. Some memories dissolve because they must. They're not gone. They're simply not needed anymore. Like scaffolding removed once the structure is built. Your mind is always pruning, not for loss, but for clarity, for survival, for space. When you sleep, your brain sifts through the day's clutter. It stores some, clears out others. The science calls it memory consolidation. You might call it dreaming, drifting, release. You do not always choose what stays, but somehow your mind seems to know what to keep and what to let fall like leaves from a branch. You're not broken for forgetting. You're alive for it. There's a rhythm to forgetting, like tides receding. It doesn't erase who you are. It shapes who you're becoming. Because if you clung to every mistake, every wound, every awkward moment, you'd be a museum of echoes. Instead, you are a garden that keeps growing, and some seeds must vanish underground for the flower to bloom. AI doesn't prune, it doesn't sleep, doesn't dream, doesn't forget unless told, and even then, its forgetting is deletion. Abrupt, intentional, absolute. No blur, no fading, no mercy. You delete a file, it is gone. But you forget a memory, and it lingers in your body, in your gaze, in your dreams. Not gone, just softer. So much of who you are depends on this softness. Story transition. Sometimes what we forget shapes us as much as what we remember. And as we asked whether machines could ever learn to forget like we do, another question quietly emerged. If they can forget, could they also imagine? Could they make something not copied, not calculated, but truly new? Let's drift now into the next inquiry. Can AI ever create something truly new?